Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. She is amazing in what she does. We've talked before very deeply about many different topics. She's a medical intuitive. What does that mean? Essentially, she can explain it in better detail, but she has intuition and she can tell you with a fair amount of accuracy what's going on in your body. And not a replacement for medical advice or anything like that, but you can take that information to a medical professional as well. She has a medical background herself. Today, we're going to talk about something that challenges many men, and it's ED. So let's bring her in here. Gloria Warren joins us on the program. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to be here. So yes, erectile dysfunction. So that would be a good topic for us to discuss. A lot of people don't like to discuss it, so they can watch the video and get some information.
Well, what I find interesting here in that you can give insight without an examination as to what's going on,
Right.
in, not just ED, but like anything that's going on in somebody's body. So for things that somebody might be uncomfortable either discussing or going for, an examination, whatever it might be, to get some insight, there's a lot of value in your medical intuition right there, I feel.
Right, because what I can do is look in and I can first discuss with them, I'm going to tell them what the symptoms, causes, and some solutions are. And then they get a good background of what actually causes these problems. What are the symptoms? And do you fall in any of these categories? And then I talk to them more about specifics depending on what they need for their particular circumstance. I log all this down so that if they decide to see a urologist or their regular general practitioner, then a urologist, they actually will have some of this information right in front of them to go by.
So when it comes to ED, isn't it there's two different things that could come into play, the psychological aspect, the physical aspect, right?
You got it. Physical symptoms and psychological symptoms and causes, as well as different resolutions. So let me just go into the symptoms, if that's okay with you. If we look at physical symptoms, obviously trouble getting an erection, perhaps maintaining erection. That's also a symptom of ED, erectile dysfunction. Reduced sex drive is also a symptom. Now, these are some of the physical symptoms, but then there's psychological symptoms, especially something like stress and anxiety in your life. Maybe you're getting added stress, which is causing a problem that's making it hard to get an erection, but then that's causing more stress in your life. And it's like a vicious circle. So sometimes I can see what the differences are because I also look at the spiritual and the intuitive part and try to connect the dots for the physician. So the emotions of different types can also be a cause. The emotions can cause things, and they can be genetic, such as, and there's definitely genetic properties that could add to erectile dysfunction, such as the actual anatomy scenario. Sleep apnea people can also have problems with erections, different medications. And this is a big topic that everyone really needs to know. Cardiology medications, cancer medications, radiation even can lead to erectile dysfunction. Neurological anxiety, diseases such as cancer, prostate cancer, intestinal cancer, whatever type, diabetes, because it hinders the circulation to that area. So also offset testosterone levels and hormonal imbalances of various types. So there's many, many causes, but there's also different solutions. And the solutions, it can be, maybe talking to a social worker about the stresses in your life, maybe clearing out your life and see if there's things that's too much for you to deal with. Maybe you can do those type of things. Or perhaps you need something physically, some assistance. And they have different types of implants. They also have pumps. But, perhaps it would start with getting some basic anatomy type tests to check the circulation in that area. Maybe there is some blocked arteries or blocked vessels. And so seeing a doctor is very important in this circumstance. So you can do a self-check on your stresses in your life and maybe things that are happening in your life that could be contributing to it. Maybe somebody else is placing stress on you. And maybe there's something else you could do to try and negate that type of stress. So you could get a good basic here and maybe start working on things. And then as you move on, you may decide that maybe we need to have more intervention, physiological intervention from a physician. But you need to start somewhere. And I'm the first stop usually in these type of matters, because I can try and nail it down and see exactly what's going on and try to direct the physician, and then maybe even a psychologist or psychiatrist or even a social worker. So
what's super cool is through your intuition, a man just needs to speak with you, right?
Right. Right.
That's it. And you can use that intuition to gain a lot of insight, information. In your experience, the psychological versus the physical, where would you put those percentages? Is it like a 60-40? Like, what do you feel?
I really think most of the time, I would say 60-70% of the time, it is psychological. And that's why I put a stress on the word stress, because many times it's just the stress is building up in somebody's life and they just cannot deal with the stress and subcategorize, push the stress aside so you can relax enough to have an erection. And, maybe you need a good vacation. Maybe it's that simple, but maybe it isn't. So definitely psychological.
Well, I would imagine, especially what you just said, let's say you have stress in life and that's causing, your challenge.
Yep.
And now you have the stress of worrying about the challenge. So now there's another layer on top of that.
Right.
So it's you're stuck in that cycle.
Yes.
And then, then I just thought of this. So then you're like, you know what? I need to relax a little bit. Maybe that'll make things better. Let me have a couple of beers. Well, that's not going to work for you, because that, from what I understand, can work against you.
Right.
In
right.
that situation, right?
Those things can work against. And something I do want to mention too is men have may or may not have erectile dysfunction problems, but also women have orgasmic problems created most of the time from stress, but it can also be physical. So just because you may be a woman, if you're having problems, I can help with that just the same.
For sure. And there's another, here we go around the merry-go-round, man feels he's not pleasing her, then that puts more pressure on him. But, it's really, she's having the challenge, and then he's feeling his self-worth go down and other things go down. So
sad world sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a cruel world. It's a cruel world.
Right.
What are your thoughts about medications? The big blue pill, been around for, a number of decades
Blue,
now.
pink, whatever you want to take.
Yeah, sure.
These pills may actually work. And sometimes if it is a stress-driven problem and not a physical problem per se, sometimes those pills will work. But you need to use them cautiously. You shouldn't just pop a pill every night and think you're going to be Hercules. It doesn't work that way. These pills actually, as you use them over and over and over again, then when you don't take it, you may actually create more stress on yourself and not be able to get an erection. And then you may be dependent on those pills psychologically and possibly physically. So it's good that the pills exist. I mean, I think they're a wonderful type of reduction of ED, but you need to use them cautiously, and you need to use them only if you and your wife are having a special night, or maybe you're going on vacation and you want to do something romantic for her. Yeah, do those things. They're there. If the pills don't work, there may be a physiological problem and you need to see your doctor.
So how deep does it go in terms of you being able to determine what's going on with somebody through your intuition?
That's a great question. Well, I do look at the physical. I do discuss a few other things, but I also get spiritual little memos that come to me and fly into my head from little outside angels that kind of tell me where you're at psychologically and perhaps even spiritually yourself. So I can see that. I can get that open communication going, which will also help to try and pinpoint. Let's say it is just stress. It'll help me pinpoint the exact stress. It'll help me to guide the person as well, so they can have something to work on and improve on themselves prior to seeing a physician.
I don't think I've ever asked you this question in general, not just for ED,
Yeah.
but how often are you able to do it? Are there times where I'm not getting nothing? Sorry.
I always get something, but like you're pretty much a pretty healthy person. So like doing a reading on you would be a little more difficult for me because I see a free spirit. I see basically a very healthy person.
I'm a
So
train wreck. Come on.
I have to look at intricate little things, and sometimes those things are much harder to find. So it may take longer. But usually I ask in any case, please don't tell me what's going on first. I don't want to know. I don't want my ego involved. I want this purely intuitive, purely spiritual, purely, using my gifts and putting them all together. And I don't want to have outside suggestions given to me. So, yeah.
So you can always pick up something on somebody.
Yeah. Something. There's
Wow.
always something, but like with you, minor, very minor, but yeah.
You probed me before. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, you identified a shoulder issue, which was spot on, and even told me about something that you felt was upcoming. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a digestion issue or something like that. And that weekend, I did have some stomach issues out of nowhere. It was kind of weird that you even
Yeah,
odd
it
or
happened.
not. Yeah. So what's the course of treatment? Let's say give an example. Again, we'll just go hypothetical here of you coming up with a determination for a man that's having some challenges, what you find, and your suggestion.
So let's say I just find a stress issue that's creating the problem. I talk to them actually about their stress issue. I can many times just know what their stress issue is, where it's coming from, and how it's affecting their mind, and looping their brain around in circles where they just can't release and to be able to get an erection. So I'll discuss that with them, and I'll talk to them I'll give them some tricks that they can use in their mind that will help them to stop that loop of thought. Things are running. It's like a hamster running on a wheel, and you can stop that easily. This is something that I could tell every man is when you get that hamster running on the wheel and things are just clouding up your brain, it's up to you. Just change your mind, and so you can keep little things around you to remind you to just change your mind, whether it's a little sticky note on your nightstand, on the lamp, or anywhere else you may want, on the refrigerator, wherever you think that you're going to need to change your mind. And throughout the day, you could actually just change your mind, and we can come up together with different things that they can start thinking about instead of their stresses in their life. Like palm trees, sitting on the beach, having that Corona, having that beer, yo quiero más cerveza, cerveza, or whatever. You got to come up with some type of mechanisms that you can ease your mind and realize that it's a common problem and it happens. And if somebody really cares about you, who cares if it happens? It is what it is. And maybe next time, the woman's not going to have the orgasm, or maybe your maid, or maybe, you'll be fine. It's irrelevant. If you cannot always perform, it's irrelevant, really. And if somebody thinks it's that relevant, maybe that's somebody you need to sit down and speak to about that situation.
What about if it's a past emotional trauma? Let's say, we've centered a bit on stress here. What about if it's, let's say, a past relationship, and maybe something happened there, or maybe you got burned in a relationship. Maybe there was, physical stuff wasn't really that much of an issue, but you got burned, and there was some scars. How do you overcome that?
Well, I can see many of those things, even past life things. I can see things in this life, see things in lives before. I can see things in relationships and little things that actually may have impeded your freedom of thought. So this is something that I would bring up. In the beginning of a session, I do ask them, if I see spiritual things or things are being told to me, is it okay for me to tell you? Because some people don't want to hear that. But at the same time, if they're open to it, I can provide much more knowledge than just the physiology scenario and stress scenario. I can provide more. I mean, maybe there was a car accident when a child was 13 or something, and it really contributed to the psychological effects, of what they went through, not necessarily the stress of today, but then that's causing stress because of what happened before. So I can look at those things, and as long as they want me to be open, I can be open. So
How do you now? We're gonna dig a little
go ahead.
deeper, a
Yeah,
little deeper here, because you have a medical background. For a man, let's say he doesn't really have any issues when he's by himself. So would that mean that things work? And now it's this.
correct. Yes, that is actually one of the tests that I ask a client. After I do the read, I will ask them things like that. When you masturbate, are you okay? Do you have an orgasm? Do you get erect all the way, or are you only semi-erect? What is the situation? If they're semi-erect, even with masturbation, being all alone when they know nobody else is around or can walk in on them, then it's most likely a physical problem involved. But it could also be a subconscious problem being with another person that it could be causing it too. So it could be a blended scenario. But if the physical seems to be involved, I do try to draw photo pictures of their vascular system, trying to show them this is where the doctor needs to look, and then they can take that to their physician.
Now, okay, so I get the subconscious thing, and I'm going to put that in the non-physical category, right? So he's alone. Things here, not really a problem. Everything's good. Um, now we're looking at something else, whether it's a psychological or subconscious. I don't know if that goes in the
No,
same
too
funnel.
different. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. And that's what I was referring to. If it's subconscious and it could be based on a previous trauma, that he might
right,
have got,
right.
relationship issue, whatever it might be. Um, how do you eradicate that?
Well, it first comes to identification. We need to identify the time and space of which this occurred, where it's hindering his freedom of thought or hers or whoever. So when we do that and we can identify it, then we can talk about it. And then I may, towards the 2/3 of the way through the session, actually discuss things with them openly and try to get them to open up further, because that opening up of the situation can help for them to release it from their mind. And that's very important. That's why I said sometimes a social worker, maybe after they go to see me, they can show that information to the social worker and say, look, I really need to talk to somebody about this. Can I talk to you? So, but first thing is we have to eliminate the physical scenario. And I have to look then too at stress being the highest level of uh, concern.
Hmm.
But it just it needs attention. You can't just ignore that. If you need to go talk to somebody about it, you need to go see somebody, even if it's, let's say, even, I mean, I do appreciate professionals for that type of thing. But maybe you don't want to see a professional, so maybe you see a minister, or maybe you see maybe your best friend just went through all this similar to you, and knew that, so maybe you want to just sit and talk. Hey, what'd you do? And then maybe just open
Well,
up to him.
it's not a lot of men are going to say to another man,
Right.
"Hey," you
Social
know,
workers, best
yeah,
first stop are social workers. They're the best, and they've heard everything under the
yeah,
sun. So you're not going to surprise them, and
for sure.
it becomes like with me, everything medically becomes just a medical scenario. I don't even think personal. I think medical. So it is what it is. Hopefully, you can find somebody you're comfortable with. if you're not comfortable with the first person, don't stop trying. Try to find somebody else that you're comfortable with.
So let me throw another one out there. What if the feeling is more of a subconscious situation, right?
Yeah.
What about hypnotherapy for you, Dee?
Yes, hypnotherapy is a good thing. A lot of times when men masturbate a lot, they just don't have much success when they're with another person. And hypnotherapy is a perfect thing that could help them get past that hump, so to speak. So many times they'll say, don't masturbate for a long period of time and then be with somebody to have sex and see if you have an erection then. I mean, there's different little things that they can do to help, or even just check and see, does it work? If it works then you know that maybe you're just masturbating too much. Maybe you need to be with another person and just space out the time further. There's many things. There's also sex therapists that deal with this directly, because different positions create different types of erections, and different types of penetration can create different types of erection. I mean, there's a whole list.
Sure.
So professionals are really where it's at. And hypnotherapist is an excellent idea if you know it's from stress and you're just, let's say the little mind games aren't working with you, and the releasing and changing your mind. And, maybe it's time then to see a hypnotherapist. Good call.
Yeah. It works for everything. Yeah. Well, you know what it was? When we said subconscious, that's where it kind of clicked in my head there.
Mm-hmm.
How do we find you, Gloria? How does a man or woman that's going through some challenges like this, how do they connect with you?
Well, text is always best. And you can text me or call 715-892-6304. Once again, 715-892-6304. And then you can check out my website at medicalintuitivegloria.com. Simple, right? So medicalintuitivegloria.com. But contact phone, please.
Gotcha. And final question.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody comes to you, let's say a man reaches out to you, I'm having an ED problem. Is that good enough to start? He just leans back there in a Zoom.
Yeah, no problem. He could stop right there. I will just start reading him and listening to etherical things talking to me, and seeing things around you and seeing things in your mind. I can even do the physiological if you like. Yes, definitely. That's all they need to say.
So that's a game changer, I think, for a lot of us, where we just don't want to talk about it,
Right.
Where if you go to a doctor, obviously you got to explain what's going on. All you got to do is somebody say 2 letters, hand it off to Gloria and see what you come up with. Fantastic. Thank you very much for being here today. Learned, as always, a lot from you. It's fantastic. And we'll catch up next time, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
We'll
Bye.
be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.